off.
Are we gonna get bought by the Saudis at some point, you think?
This show? What would our price be?
Yeah. I'd put us up for like $1 million.
Yeah, how much could a podcast cost? $1 million. Actually, like
$1 million.
In a fucked up way, like I feel like $1 million is enough where like I would be sort of nervous that it's enough money where we could like potentially get in trouble with something, you know, like, you know, maybe we accidentally used some music we weren't supposed to, maybe, you know, or it's $1 million, someone's going to be like, oh, I want a cut of that. Maybe we're going to get you in trouble, where if like they just like paid us, you know, $50,000, like no one's going to care.
Or they just bought us a TikTok house.
Yeah.
For us to make that career
a
transition.
Second one, because we do, that's what we podcast from every week already.
A nicer TikTok house.
Right, exactly. One where we can have the dog in a different room.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I you know, bids open to all of them. I'm also available for purchase. I made a super sub appearance at GeoGuessr last night because I'm sitting out the season. So my price is 100 million pounds with 6 million in add-ons if you want it. Now that I've seen the Declan Rice rumors, you know, I have to raise my ante a little bit. I am hurt, but this is the price you have to get for talent nowadays. And you don't get the podcast included if you buy that. That will still be bid.
It's like the media rights thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's episode 250 of View from 202.
I guess it's kind of a landmark.
Yeah, I guess
250, the quarter. I don't
quarter
know.
Century or millennia.
It's the kind of thing where if we had a super like thirsty social media operation, we would have to post a little graphic like 250th episode.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Big announcement.
Thank you to us, first of all.
Well, I have an announcement, actually.
Oh, yeah?
For every episode we recorded, I've been squirreling away $1,000. So now we have $250,000 saved up in the bank, which, I have good authority, is exactly enough for one ticket for a submarine trip. And we have to decide who's going to get it. I haven't, you know, I've been nervous about it, so I haven't read the news or anything about it, but it's about $250K per couple fees.
So apparently the deal is, though, that it's $250K, but if the dive doesn't go off for whatever reason, you get a free ride next summer.
Yeah.
So if it implodes, you get to come back next summer and try again.
Right.
So maybe we can pull that gambit off where like one of us gives it the first try, and then if it doesn't work out, then tough titty, next man up next summer.
Sam has been podcasting from the submarine for months.
Yeah, that's true.
I was gonna say I have extensive experience in shipping containers, dark spaces.
Well, this explains why Sam's audio has been like this for so long.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I actually have several offers to go in a submarine in Austria right now. Looking forward to fielding those offers instead. You guys can have your, American Canadian offer to go in the submarine. I've got my own, but let's.
I've actually decided my Jules Verne expedition will be a hot air balloon trip around the world.
Oh,
I just got done dealing with a very ambitious entrepreneur who told us that he had fail-proof pressing tactics, and only the worry warts are letting him down.
You should see the expected goals in North Haverbrook, in Ogdenville, in Shelbyville. No, not Shelbyville. Whatever the third one is. They're off the charts, folks. But yeah, 250. I guess it's a kind of sort of it's sort of a round number. I don't know. That's fun. And we're here reviewing a 4-point week for the Red Bulls, a draw against Charlotte and a win against Atlanta. 4 points is kind of what we asked for. I think we were kind of expecting the results to be flipped, but hey, 4 points, we'll take it.
But in hindsight, we shouldn't have.
Shouldn't have what?
Expected to not win against Atlanta, I guess.
Yeah, I've kind of been taking that for granted.
Yeah, it really feels like the kind of thing where it's like, oh, that couldn't possibly still be the record, right? that we lost to them at one of the random like zone games the
One
last
of the
few years,
Trooper
right?
games.
Apparently
Yeah.
not.
Wait.
Wait, did we not lose?
We didn't lose to
We did
Atlanta
lose
earlier
to-
this
wait,
year?
we
Not-
had
not-
this.
not
I
at
think we
home.
had this conversation maybe while we were watching,
Yeah.
but
I think we were so numb at that point earlier this season that was one of the
I guess
few
at
things we
home,
had.
the record still holds. But
That's true. We've never lost at home to Atlanta still. Have we lost at home to Charlotte? I don't know. You know, we've played Charlotte probably like 6 times
9
ever,
times.
8 times ever, and yet I still struggle to remember.
I was exaggerating because it really has. This is only their second season.
Oh, okay.
So this is only the 4th time we've played them, but still,
It weirdly feels like more.
we played them in Open Cup last year, so it's 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
but-
we had the Open Cup that was really close to the away game last year. So I feel
Right.
like we just talked about them for like a few consecutive weeks, and it just felt like a lot.
and you've been at both the away games so
I've
far,
been
right?
to most games so far.
Okay. That's also probably why I feel like it's more, because I'm like, Sam's been twice. Surely they've been around for 5 years at this
we've
point.
had kind of
you know?
heightened senses for the Charlotte games, both figuratively and literally.
Yeah. I genuinely was assuming they were around for at least 3 years now. And what is this, Austin's 3rd year now?
It's yes, no
Quiz
yes.
time for us all here.
2 or 3.
Yes, because they were kind of
Three,
bad their
three,
first
three.
year, and then they wrecked last year, and now they're kind of bad again. And it's Miami's 4th year.
That is wild. I don't remember a thing about any of their seasons. I mean, this is a well-worn topic for listeners
At
of the
this
show
point.
that we've, kind of just lost our sense of.
Well, I
Remember when
remember
things
Miami's
happen.
start as
Miami and Nashville started the same
was
year.
when Robles left to me.
Yeah. I guess like Miami really just coincides with the zone and then COVID.
took Robles, and then Nashville took Muil,
Yeah.
and on top of having Dax come on board right before that.
I feel like we played Miami in the bubble too, right?
Probably.
Because there was, I think that might have
MLS's
been
back tournament.
who we were playing when I came back from. I was kind of on the tail end of a psychedelic trip that wasn't so great, and I came back and it was the first MLS's back game, and I was like, oh, I'll just like calm myself down with some Chris Armas Red Bull soccer. This will be great. And it had all like the Zoom screens, where it was like spectators on the side, and I
Yeah.
think we were playing Miami, and it did not help. It wasn't a good time.
It was also just horrible vibes
Yeah.
for all of sports in that period of time.
Yeah.
But that especially
Literal
was one of the
Mickey Mouse
worst, where
tournament.
it was literally just like in a park in like the dark with like floodlights and shit.
Yeah.
I mean, Miami, lifelong Miami fans will, finally see their club come to glory now that they've,
We've done what?
Now that they've signed Busquets.
yeah, I was going to say Busquets is finally part of their missing
Busquets.
piece. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, they had Blaise Matuidi, as Steve Cangelosi was
This
so
is
fond
true.
of remembering.
European talent has gone well for Inter Miami so
Yeah.
far.
Well, so Charlotte, the first game, I feel like I'm gonna have a little bit more to say about Atlanta, but let's not skip ahead. Charlotte, I did miss this game. I had an important dub to rack up of my own. Work softball team got its first win. Cork was there as well. We both contributed. This did mean that we lost our ability to attend the Red Bulls game. It's a 2-2 draw. Tale of two halves from what I gather. Mm-hmm. We go down 2-0 pretty quickly, courtesy of 2 pretty decent strikes from Ben Bender, real person, on a real team. And then
He was who stung us last year, half dozen games ago against Charlotte, in Charlotte.
Yeah.
do you think he's related to the Bender twins?
From Dortmund?
Yeah.
Maybe. I wonder if he's related to Jonathan Bender, the NBA guy.
I was thinking the robot from Futurama.
Him too. Are the Bender twins retired by now? Surely, right?
Yeah, but even though they're only like 31, 32, I think. But they're both, I think, done by already. Like, then, I don't know. Like, they're doing whatever. The
34.
typical first world footballers where they're like, oh, I'm going to start like a fucking packaging company. I'm bored with Le Sport.
God, they both retired in the same year. And they were both still with Leverkusen.
How old are they now?
34.
Yeah, okay, so they gave it up pretty quick.
Damn, they had a long insurance career ahead of themselves.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They couldn't delay any further.
That's what I mean.
So, Ben Bender, though, long lost triplet of the Bender twins, came in and gave us a good one. 2 pretty good goals, I have to say. When I was reviewing them before recording here, I was pretty 50-50. I was like, I don't know, can Sean Nealis do better on these? And rewatching the first one in particular, the long ball and very deft touch with his left shoulder and clean finish. I don't know. I think, it's
then
apparent
you
to
brought
me.
in Dr. Cork to
I was
to run
like,
the rule.
What's your read here? Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, you introduced it like, oh, I don't see if you think Nealis was at fault here, and then I watched, and it was kind of like, I mean, obviously he's the central, defensive figure in each of them, and obviously they both ended in a goal, but the first one is kind of one where that's one where I'm going to kind of let people with a higher pay grade kind of give their take. I mean, which is impossible on this show, but anyway, just the idea that it's kind of a thing where I am not technically trained enough. I did not move high up enough on the soccer playing ladder to have ever been trained in that sophisticated of the defensive arts to know whether he was necessarily positioning his body wrong. To me, it comes off like a situation where he didn't really lose the ball. He didn't really lose the man. He was, he was still able to make a play on it. And I think it's just a situation where you can't really clock that, especially a guy like Bender is going to, who's not even a forward, not even a striker really, is going to be able to make a touch like that in that tight of space. I think Nealis still had his body there, still had his body on the man, and it just took, an incredible couple of touches to get around him. And then on the second one, after a few viewings, I'll say that, it did seem like Nealis was a little slow. He cuts off the entry ball that leads to the loose ball that Charlotte pounces on for the goal. Nealis cuts off the initial play, but the fact that he's kind of a little bit behind and having to sort of rush to get there means that he can't really put in that kind of confident of a clearance, and it just kind of bobbles, and Charlotte's able to turn it around into the net. So I'll do kind of a push on whether, it's kind of like an outrageous play by Nealis. Like, I think a more elite, a more athletic, whatever center back, maybe, handles those a bit better. But, in MLS, you're going to have, kind of, not fully rounded players in situations some of the time. And you just kind of have to bank on that throughout the year. And I mean, I guess that kind of segues me into just my global take on this game, where it's just sort of like, obviously this is in hindsight that they came back and were able to secure a point out of it, but it's also just that, like, now that we're officially in a situation where, we're not necessarily in crisis mode, and we can sort of, we're not, contending for shield or anything, and can kind of just sort of leisurely go about the season. You can sort of, kind of take on water in some moments. You can sort of, survive some halves where you have some farts and end up 2-0 down, especially when you can come back in that game. So, that's just kind of something that happens in soccer. And I don't think anybody's under the illusion that this is some elite team that, can't afford to give up any margins. Just there's going to be some stinky halves sometime, even now that the ship's a little bit more righted.
Yeah, I think even, like, I remember watching in real time and seeing that goal live, and I was like, oh, I mean, what are you going to do about that? Like, that's kind of like a really nice world-class touch to get set up that first goal. And the second one, I think the error came much before wherever Sean Nealis was involved, really, to the point where, like, it's not his fault due to him doing well in the positioning originally, leading to kind of whatever mistake.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte had numbers down there. They had their full set down there, and just, when you allow that to happen, it's always
like
odds.
But like you're saying, like, it's definitely different to feel like, because a few months ago this kind of half would not have resulted in a draw, I don't think, or necessarily like felt like we would come back as strongly as we would have, especially if it happened in the first half. I feel like a lot of these two-ish draws would have been like, oh, we got an early goal and then it was just kind of a clog to end up as a draw. Whereas, like in the second half, we came out totally different, like totally energized, totally awake. And that was reassuring that we had a difference and an improvement in the second half. After kind of like what I presume is a halftime speech, maybe some, shifts and alterations in what we're doing. But, I didn't necessarily have that feeling, but it's good to have that feeling. And honestly, it felt weird to have that feeling at the game. It's like, oh, this is the second half. I'm kind of expecting us to try to fight back now. That's not a familiar feeling I've had this season.
So Troy made 2 changes. Daniel Ottoman came in for Frankie Amaya, and Dante Van Zier came in for Peter Stroud, who had started in the midfield. So we had an attacker. I don't know. Did it seem like that change in the personnel had a big effect on being able to link up more, getting one more forward player? Peaches, you were there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily like the changes of personnel, but definitely kind of how the players were situated. I remember thinking at the time that, maybe those weren't the players I would have subbed at that moment in terms of like where Amaya was. But to be frank, no one really looked good at all in the first half. Everyone was kind of making bad IQ plays. But when the changes came in and everyone kind of moved together, the glue kind of reshaped itself a little bit, it felt like to me, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Well, the first goal is a pretty simple one. Let me get out the tap-in meter here to recalibrate it. It is a nice bit of play from Elias Manuel, who bursts by the defender and then cuts the ball across to Dante Van Zier, who, I guess it's a first time, but it's not a volley, it's not up in the air. And squares it across, which was really refreshing to see.
Kind of vintage Red Bull goal.
Yeah, just like simple running across, cutting back. And I think it really just made apparent how, infrequently we even had 2 guys that deep down the field making runs together until recently. It's not groundbreaking stuff. It's pretty basic stuff. But
it reminded me of back, when the last time we were playing with 2 strikers regularly, when it was Klimala and Fabio, we saw that kind of play happen where Klimala broke out wide and then fed Fabio a few times. Not necessarily in that kind of cutback mode, but I think that's just kind of adding on to what you were saying, Brit, about I kind of mentioned this a minute ago, where it was some of Van Zier's chances that he's been able to get, where it's just sort of like it's as simple as having 2 strikers up there, it increases the threat. As long as you make your calculations deeper in the formation, right, you're adding more dimensions to your attack. You're letting strikers have different channels to work in, and when we just had Klimala or Manuel or Fletcher or whoever just on islands last year, I don't know how you expected anything to come to fruition.
Yeah, and Van Zier's run to get there was actually pretty good and smart. I thought, like, from 60 yards behind that play where it started, the way that he moved was that's the thing about Van Zier, is like he's always seemed to have good movement. It's just that either the pace or like the technique has let him down so far.
Yeah, and the second goal comes up after a corner, kind of recycling the ball around, and ultimately gets thrown into the mixer by Kyle Duncan, knocked down, and Harper is there to bundle it in. Not a pretty one, but effective. And I think in a different way, you can tally this onto the tap-in meter too, where it's just really basic stuff of knocking the ball down, staying with it, and putting pressure continually on the opponent until they eventually break.
It kind of makes me think of a diagnosis that Struber often gave for why the team struggled to, score and put so to speak, chances away was that he would say, "Oh, the players were surprised by the chance. The players weren't expecting the chance to come so quickly," or something along those lines in his diction. That's that goal, the Harper goal from the other night. I think is an example of the opposite of that dynamic, where it's a pretty intuitive soccer play, where it all happens pretty methodically and all pretty not predictable in the sense that the defense can prepare for it, but predictable enough that the attackers can kind of just reflexively do what they've been sort of trained to be intuitive about their whole lives playing soccer, as opposed to some Rube Goldberg device to get a specific type of goal from, zone 13 or whatnot. I think, just more than anything, the most general sense you can get of what's turned around in this team from Lasane's first game to all the way now, a couple months later, is just that the players look more free to just, do fairly simple stuff that is a lot more effective than the heavily complicated things that we were trying to do previously.
Yeah, to me it scans like the players are kind of just seeking the weird little half opportunities, half weird bounces. Right. Whereas before it was everything had to be very, very intentional and deliberate.
And you turned around and shut down and turned the ball around if it wasn't on immediately.
Yeah. One thing that sticks out to me with this goal, and particularly like the last two goals against Atlanta on Saturday, are just how we challenged the ball and kind of like went up for a header, went for the 50-50 chances, and just threw the ball back into the box and kept recycling it around into danger spots, even if it wasn't like a perfect pass each time. And then we just like created the pressure continually, like I was saying already, and that eventually broke through. That felt like it wasn't really happening previously. I think one of my more conspiratorial takes, I don't know, tinfoil hat takes, is that for a while there it really felt like the team was like intentionally not challenging for headers. Like it was trying to do like a weird double feint thing where you'd
that would lead to maybe like a juicy second ball or something.
Yeah. And I'll actually say that it's at times it felt like other teams are maybe doing that too, although maybe it's sort of a feedback loop. I don't know. Part of me does wonder how much that was in reaction to the apparent refereeing change that happened at the beginning of last season.
There was some refereeing adjustment that I don't think anybody, whether it was the referees themselves, players, or anyone, was really on the same page about for a while. And for especially last year, you saw a pretty long stretch of time where like every single game had very awkward and heavily disputed, header decisions that would have been, pretty innocuous and straightforward in previous years.
Yeah. So maybe that was just more of a global thing than the Red Bulls thing, because it did feel like last summer, too, there was a point where maybe both teams were just like, fuck it, fine. We're just not going to go for any headers if you guys are just going to stop the play every single time, which created some weird things. And maybe the league has backed off on that, or the refs have backed off on that. Who knows? But it's nice to see something a little bit more straightforward here, at least. But, there were more chances being made against Charlotte. Honestly, it seems like we were sort of unlucky to not go ahead and come all the way back here and get a full-on win here. We have a few chances that get close. Elias Manuel gets a ball saved off a diving header. Is this one of his better games for us so far? I don't know. It doesn't look like he was too amazing, but it felt like he was active in a way that I'm not usually expecting when I see his name on the team sheet.
I was less frustrated with I think his decision making this game, but I think that also had to do with the fact that we were playing a little bit faster in general and increasing the pace of the game.
Well, and he's the type of player who's, being a converted winger, he's helped more than probably any other forward in the team by playing a two-striker formation where he can peel out wide and just generally not have as much responsibility. But even that being said, I have seen the last few games him get a little bit better with his back-to-goal stuff and being able to kind of, play 1-2s and, link up with the rest of the formation transitioning into the final third. So, it looks like there might be a little bit of a player there. But yeah, we're just generally, I mean, waiting to see a lot of things come into place
I think it's
with this team in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you talked about that, because sometimes I felt like he's a little too hesitant in terms of like what he's doing or the way he's trying to link up, in that like, oh, maybe this would have been more effective if you just like were a little bit more progressive in terms of like making a run instead of trying to be there for that 1-2 or whatever. But like that kind of thing also comes with the way that the other players are going to play around you too, I think, and generate chances. So
Yeah, he might be benefiting from just having a little bit more consistency of knowing what's going to be expected of him playing in a 2-striker pairing, instead of maybe expecting that the next week he might be the main guy who's being who they're going to look to try to put away chances. Who knows? But yeah, promising. I think bitter pill to swallow that we end up with only a point here. But, as I said at the top of this, 4 points for the week was a pretty decent clip. At the end of this week, we do have 14 points from 7 games under Lassane, which is a 2-point per game clip, which is pretty decent overall. That's kind of a highly competitive benchmark over the years. Who knows how that might be changing as the league grows in size and talent dilution and everything. But in years past, that's kind of been a goal benchmark for teams to be hitting, which is still positive. And to be so close to a 6-point week, I think, is still a feel-good direction. It's also happens while we have a couple players out. John Tolkien is out with the national team. Corey Burke is out with his national team. They actually played against each other on Saturday in the Gold Cup. And Andres Reyes was out suspended on Wednesday and only played one half on Saturday. So not bad, all things considered, one has to say. And the fact that we gave up 2 pretty good strikes also makes me a little bit less pressed about it. At least we made them earn it with their finishing. It wasn't just sort of a brain fart. So I'll take this. We end our season series with Charlotte with 2 draws apiece. 1-1 down in Charlotte, 2-2 here up in Harrison. And then we went on to Atlanta on Saturday.
Hot Atlanta.
And this was very different. This was kind of a funny game, like we were saying earlier. I mean, I don't know. We kind of just went ahead early and never looked back. And I feel like I kind of took it for granted when we were watching this. It was only later where I was like, yeah, wait, why is Atlanta so bad right now? Like, what is this mess that's going on?
I mean, well, and they were near the top of the table for the first, kind of stretches of the season. They did not look like it, in this game the other night.
Yeah, it going into this week, we were like, oh, Charlotte's kind of close to us in the table. Beating them would be a good leapfrog, and Atlanta's, 4th or 5th. But lo and behold, Atlanta did not look sharp at all. They had a lot of the same players that played against us and finally got their first ever regular season win against us earlier this year. Yakimakis actually had quite a few AEK Athens and the fans in the stadium.
Yeah, he's a celeb apparently.
Yeah, Almada was playing though. Ibarra was playing. Our good old friend Andrew Gutman was playing. Not particularly well, I have to say.
yeah, I kind of messed it up for Atlanta.
It's because he's pulling his socks up all the way to his knees now.
Was he?
He gave up the life.
Damn. Only John Tolkien's living that life now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second he pulls him up. Although Tolkien's probably never going to pull his socks up because he's never going to grow old.
Oh yeah, he's stuck. Brooks Lennon, that's a good example of like a name that's just a name. Like, is that a real person? I don't know. Why is that a name?
He was like a prospect at one point somewhere.
Yeah, he was on the U20s for a little bit. He started out as like kind of a fancy winger, but got moved to fullback as he became a pro. He's always looked like evil Pulisic. So that's always been his tag for me.
Brooks Lennon is like a great parody name for an American, I think. Like
Brooks Lennon.
Yeah.
Brooks Lennon.
That's the Ecuadorian version. But yeah, Atlanta has their full squad here. The Red Bulls, for our side, we played a pretty familiar group ourselves. Of course, Tolkien was still out, like I was saying, so Kyle Duncan filled in on the left side, and honestly, that was fine. Lord knows I've been frustrated by this in years past, especially when we ostensibly had other left-footed or left-sided players to put there, but he wasn't really exposed. There were a couple frustrating moments where I expected him to do a little better going forward based on what we've seen from him before, but there was really no defensive liability from Kyle Duncan at all this game, which is nice to see. But Andres Reyes played a half before getting subbed out. Harper played on the right side. Is there any news on what happened to Reyes? Was he hurt? Was he just not feeling it? I don't know. He came out at the half. Daniel Edelman and CCJ started. CCJ gets the second goal, of course. Daniel Edelman gets the first goal. And then a kind of familiar front three. Luquinhas starts both games this week. Played all 90 on Wednesday. Plays 77 on Saturday. Elias Manuel plays 70 minutes on Saturday. And Tom Barlow starts up with him. Drew Yearwood also started in midfield. And is this the first time in a while that Drew has started, but not in that like weird supporting attacking role? It might be.
Maybe. He did look more.
I don't think he's really done that when there's been two strikers in the formation,
right? Except
when in the games where like Barlow's been peeled off as a winger.
I think he looked quite good.
Yeah, I was gonna say he looked more involved.
Yeah, I also realized I think I have a soft spot for Drew because now that I've been playing midfield in Sunday League more often, I realize I basically really like doing what he does, which is just like bursting through into space and then taking a little bit too strong of a touch and then going,
being like a tailback, bursting through crowded midfield.
Exactly.
That was one of the questions that I think I had mentioned at the end of last episode. It was just like, what are we going to do in that role after this break? Right, where like we have all this time to figure out, okay, who's going to be that sort of like central attacking midfielder, and it looked like it was CCJ for a bit in the first half of the Charlotte game. But I mean, I was going to mention this when we were talking about Charlotte, but I think it's applicable here. I think it's just another example of CCJ just being more effective in a deeper role, and it also just shows that we don't currently have anybody else really capable of, stepping up in that way. And, if it ends up being Drew kind of playing in that role, I mean, it seems to be working, especially at, the stretch of games that he's been up there.
Yeah, totally. I think that Saturday was a great example, too, of CCJ being better in that more reserved role. I was pleasantly surprised to see him paired with Edelman back there instead of Drew. And I think also the goal he scored was a good example of how CCJ still will bring that edge to his game without having to be thrown literally like into an advanced midfielder attacking position. He's just an opportune, well-rounded player. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to put him into an attacking role from the start. So it's nice to have him flex into that instead. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice balance to the midfield we had here. And then ultimately Stroud was able to come in the second half, and it's hard to judge too much because we kind of really start pulling away from Atlanta there, and they stop kind of threatening at all. So everyone kind of had a good time or easy time, but Stroud continues to look very competent, and Frankie Amaya, of course, comes in.
You say that about the end of the game, but somebody fucking put the team on their back, fucking turned the match around, just completely changed the trajectory of not only the game, but the entire match week, according to the league.
In the league wide, yeah.
Yeah, this Frankie Amaya performance is going down in the history books.
I mean, you should
this 13 minutes of pure mastery.
Was he only on the pitch for 13 minutes? Or
I think so.
That's incredible.
I missed most of the goals in this game.
Oh yeah, you were like up and getting refilling your soda or something.
Yeah,
I almost missed one. I mean, hey, a good problem to finally have again, right? Well, you're right. 13 minutes. Damn.
13 minutes of power.
Wow.
That's a goal every 7.5 minutes.
This is, ooh, wow.
6.5
Put him
minutes.
up top.
Yeah.
FutMob agrees. 8.7 rating with a star next to it.
The new Tim Cahill.
Oh, shit. That's a name some older Red Bulls fans might remember. And I say this really liking Frankie, you know.
Yeah, no, this is not to hate on Frankie at all.
Yeah.
It's just very, very funny to me that he would be picked for that based on 2 garbage time goals. I mean, even the long range nature was kind of held back by the fact that it was a deflection. Just I don't know. I guess it's become, and people have noticed and cracked jokes about it for a while now that the league team of the week is usually, especially with defenders, they just picked whoever scored a goal or anybody who scores 2 goals, even if it's 2 garbage time goals at the end of a game that's already 2-0. They'll automatically get into the team of the week. But the ultimate kind of point that I should be taking home with all this is that none of this matters. Awards don't matter. So congratulations, Frankie. And just, nice to see Frankie thriving, even though he got pulled the other night. It's nice to have, a little turnaround. And hopefully when the team and the lineup really starts to settle, he's a part of it.
It was funny because he was really not celebrating either goal. It was only until everyone else got around him where he's like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll celebrate. He looked actually kind of sheepish about the second one, where he was like, my bad. It's kind of like, when a tennis player hits a serve or not, I guess anything but a serve off of like the top of the net and it drops and they always sort of like apologize. It was kind of like that. But I'm looking at his stats right now. I'm looking at his profile on FutMob, seeing his age, and it really blows me away to see. Did you know that Frankie Maya was born after the Catherine Bigelow cyberpunk thriller Strange Days? Isn't that fucked up? Feels like just yesterday that came out. I can't believe it. He was also born after the Christopher Guest classic, Waiting for Guffman. It's incredible. He was born after that. I can't believe it.
It's wild that even all these things that have come to and from since John Woo's classic Face Off. John Tolkien, not even around for it.
Yeah.
But
yesterday I was just alphabetizing all of my records and watching High Fidelity in the background and thinking about, I really feel like John Tolkien should be alive by now.
Yeah, this doesn't feel like a world that John Tolkien doesn't exist in already, but sure enough. But yeah, I was just going to do one more riff on the Frankie Amaya Man of the Match thing. I want to do one of those like USMNT charts that they're like graphics that they do for guys playing in Europe, where it's like 3 passes made, 4 jumps, like 1.
Oh yeah,
one key run.
Yeah, key run is a good one. Yeah, that might be a real one too.
3. 3 fucking direction changes.
I was gonna say,
This obviously means he had a good soccer game.
I've been struggling to come up with a suitable bit for this now, but there's something in here with like general media literacy being poor and how dribbles completed is the American Psycho is not, or Norman Bates is not a sympathetic protagonist take.
Okay, I like how you were like, if I were to make a bit, and then you kind of just made the whole bit.
Yeah, but like, it being funny.
Sure.
Instead,
yeah. So imagine if you were it,
right,
if you will, that was funny.
But just to drive home the point of my bit, it's just that, Frankie Maya had the performance that we're making fun of being named as man of the match and team of the week or whatever. It's the kind of thing where like, if Frankie Amaya was playing for, Rapid Vienna or somebody or some other random European team instead of an MLS, you would see 3 million graphics. Frankie Amaya with 2 goals. He dominated, and he's dominating in
Why
the
aren't they playing him more?
He's dominating in the Swedish Uppsala. He's just fucking tearing it up. 2 goals in 13 minutes.
Yes.
Tell me what striker is scoring at that rate.
Why aren't a serious European clubs
MLS.
already signing him?
Yeah.
But anyway, enough of us finding that weird.
I'll before we move on, I'll give a shout out to Daniel Edelman's goal. It's just kind of a funny. I don't know. It's like
A few of his goals now he hasn't really scored a ton, but I mean, so it's like most of them, I guess. He's good at that little, like, kind of, it's not even like a late run, because it's not like he's getting on the end of crosses
Just
or
turning
anything
the
like
guy on
that.
his other
It's just kind
shoulder.
of like stalking into the box and
Yeah.
then just sort of ripping it. Yeah.
that's it. That plays a good example of something where I'm like, why don't they just do that every play?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, like how did we just beat Atlanta on a throw-in
nobody's
like
in my
that?
way. Like,
Right.
you know, why don't I just step up and have a rip? Like,
Yeah, that's one where Gutman. I feel more confident saying Gutman fucked that up somehow. He looked kind of lost compared,
He's just on the wrong side of him.
especially compared to how Nealis is playing. Like we were saying at the beginning of the episode, like he looked, because the ball bounces at least twice, if not 3 times, before Edelman hits it, and Guzan does get beat at his near post. I mean, granted, it is hard and right in front of him, but still, solid goal from Edelman. Yeah, as you're saying, Cork, he's kind of got a knack for that, it looks like. But
Yeah, I mean, Edelman, like, as you're saying, it bounces 3 times, but he's shielding the body, so he's clearly, like, shielding the ball in his way, so he's, like, over it very smartly, you know?
yeah, I don't know. Like to see us being a little bit more adventurous with that, being opportune. But solid 4-goal clip. This is the first 4-0 win we've had since 2019. It's kind of weird, you know. And I think the team is finally winning enough again that they're remembering how to do like the post-game celebration. They were kind of bad at it for a second. Like they're a little bit more in sync this time. Although if I do have to give some notes, I do think they're still taking longer than they used to get around the stadium. Like they take like 5 minutes
there
to get
might
around
be,
the
like,
stadium now.
A media obligation or something with Apple now that they do.
But look,
Or, like,
the
it seems
majority
like
of
they-
them are
What,
just
to
kind
walk
of.
around the field?
Well, I mean, it, like,
They
seems
can
like,
get B-roll still of them if they just walk up.
Yeah,
it
to
seems
the
like
South
they're, like,
Floor.
conducting, like, some media interviews and stuff like that.
Well, that's
before
always
the
happened
thing.
with one
Yeah.
or two. It just feels like a couple, like before COVID. I think COVID is the big thing here as well, because like a lot of these guys actually joined the team when like there were no fans in the stands at all.
Yeah, that too.
So just maybe the rhythm of everything got thrown off from there, but it felt much more quick that the guys would like move around the field and kind of just want to get in the locker room. But it feels like now that the guys kind of just like talk for 2 to 3 minutes on the field. I mean, which always happened a little bit, but I don't know. This is
Come on,
like,
we got parties to go to.
yeah, this is like the most important thing about this. It's really fucking
get the
pissing me off.
routine
Yeah,
down.
it's really annoying.
They
me.
got to understand that we're living in the 4HL.
yeah.
they gotta let us, you know, cut out.
I'm feeling the pull of the path train back into Journal Square. You gotta. This is yeah. Come on, guys, get it together. But good problems to have. We're playing Columbus in a week. Feels like we just played them.
Who's their manager these days?
Nancy.
Oh, that's right.
Willie Nance.
Yeah. We're playing them next Saturday. We got a whole another week now. You know,
They looked pretty sharp against us in the last game, and it sounds like it's not like I watch all their games. I don't think anybody in MLS watches games anymore.
No.
But it sounds like they've been, you know, pretty sharp all year. Nancy might just be just pretty damn good coach.
we were being skeptical of that.
No,
too.
I did totally. Yeah.
but he's proved us sort of wrong. They do have the unique, truly solitary dishonor this year of being the only team to lose to Gerhard Struber in 2023,
Damn.
which is wild.
Crisis Club.
Yeah, take a trip down memory lane. Do you remember Luquinhas scoring the 58th minute and Dante Venzi? I do remember the
I do
Dante
remember
Venzi
that.
goal.
Yeah.
I don't remember the Luquinhas goal though at all. That actually feels wrong now that I look at it. Was this the game where they scored on us and then immediately held like a little conference.
Yeah, right.
And like and they're like, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, and we just like kind of stood with our head in our hands.
I
and then
perversely
turned it around anyway.
Yeah, I perversely found that to be such a flex. I was like, damn, okay, like they're not even impressed with themselves at all.
Yeah.
Columbus is quietly, on a good little tear for a second there. They lost a couple games in a row, but now they are unbeaten in 5. Their one draw was against City, where they gave up a very last minute equalizer, so nearly 5 on the trot. They most recently beat Nashville 2-0. Was this the game that had that? No, that was the RSL game that had like the really insane goal. I don't know. It's too many games now.
Every game has an insane goal too.
Yeah.
That might be, just kind of like farting it out here, but just like that might be a weird little like part of the bell curve of MLS improving, where it's like defending and like team structure is still kind of loose and bad in some places, but there's more and more players who can just hit it long range and just score golazos or whatever. So they're saying like, oh my God, this is going to be the goal of the year, like every week now. And it all just kind of washes over, I feel like. And that's kind of part of the general sort of, jaded milieu of MLS these days.
Yeah, oversaturation. And I think that's like partially due to the fact that defenses are a little bit better in MLS too, right? That you like have
well,
to
that's
force,
what I mean.
yeah.
Like defenses have gotten a little bit better, but not as much as the attacking has improved. Now that there's all these, every team has 3 different RGs who can bend it in from anywhere on the pitch if you give them space.
Except for us.
Yeah,
Back in my day, you would get one Eric Hostley goal every 12
Yeah,
months,
exactly.
and you'd have to savor it, and
You had to soy face over that all year.
it would get nominated for the Puskas Award next to Arda Turan's goals, and you'd have to be like, this is so important. This is so important. And nowadays, you don't see that much anymore. But anyway, Columbus, what goes on there? Does anyone know?
They really are that kind of team for all of MLS. They are the most sort of NPC regen team. I've said it multiple times in recent years on this show whenever we play them that I never have any clue whether they're having a good or bad season. It seems like it's always happening simultaneously. Feels like every season they go through either one half or 1 month of the year where they're just either terrible or winning all their games, and it's just always alternating back and forth, and in the aggregate they come out with like a title like once a decade.
Yeah, I was about to say, hey, didn't they make MLS Cup final like 3 years ago? But no, they didn't. They fucking won it.
They won the COVID League. Yeah.
Wow. Just goes to show.
Yeah.
Okay, is this real player or not? Alexandru Matan.
I feel like he's been around for a couple of years. He's Romanian, right?
Yeah.
He's Romanian, so that means that Hamlet was looking at him in 2019.
Yeah, I thought he was that guy who just pops up in all the Twitch streamers stuff.
Muhammad Farsi.
Ooh. I feel like I might have used him
like
in a football manager game like 6 years ago.
This is a good regen name. Juan Hernandez.
Oh man, I've met him probably. I've met a Juan Hernandez, multiple ones in my life.
Statistically, yeah.
These are all real players. I'm just looking at the squad, but Christian Ramirez is a great example of a guy where I'm like, oh, I kind of assumed I would like learn about who this guy is and what his deal is. It would be necessary or just figured out for me at some point. But nope, still I'm kind of just like, oh, that was the guy.
He was out of the league for a few years.
Was that the Minnesota guy?
Yeah, he was on Minnesota, and then he went to Scotland for a few years, and now he's back.
Miguel Ibarra and him were doing the Batman thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Aberdeen. Wow. Okay, yeah, I remembered him getting traded to Houston, and I was like, is this a big deal or not? I don't know. That's kind of a trade that, I don't know. I feel like an old man.
What goes on here?
Yeah. Lucas Zelarayan, Darlington Nagbe still playing. That's kind of wild. But yeah, what
I was going to ask if Federico Higuain was still playing.
They had, I don't know if he's been still playing in their recent games, especially in the good form they've had, but they had this rookie playing center back against us in the game earlier this year, who he ended up getting kind of lost on the goals that ended up getting scored later on, but he looked pretty sharp for a guy who I I had never heard of him, and then when I looked him up during the game, it was like his second game as a pro.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if he's still been around with Philip something, I think. I don't know.
Quinton.
Okay.
Philip Quinton.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like he played in their last game, but yeah. I guess this poses an interesting prompt, though, or an interesting fixture, now that we're in the post-Struber era, where, we dare to have some expectations without getting too ahead of ourselves, while still understanding it's a little bit of house money. But Columbus, kind of a mid-table team. Let me double check. Yeah, fifth. I guess it depends what you count mid-table these days. It's all
the entire of MLS is a mid-table.
Yeah. So, they're fifth.
Except for Cincinnati this year.
9, right, exactly. So they're basically the same. They're maybe like marginally better table-wise than Atlanta are. Atlanta are 6th right now, So like same general tier, I'm going to say, there in terms of just vague expectations. A team that is, feeling themselves. They're playing at home. They're probably not too scared of us. We're going into their house. We're still, getting our footing. Is this a game where we're at the point where we can realistically expect or want a point? I mean, it feels wrong for me personally to be like, oh yeah, we're going to go in, or to like write this game off entirely. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we were saying about the Seattle game, right? Where it was like, yeah, this is the first game in a while where like maybe it's like
okay to lose.
Yeah. Or that's kind of just how this might go. This doesn't feel that level. I still recognize that it could happen, but yeah, I don't know. I think my expectations are still for a point here based on how these last 2 games went. What do you think?
I think we're due for a boring game. I feel like we might just get like a really, maybe a point, like in that regard, where it's like a weirdly drawn out 0-0 or something like that, in a bad way, not a good way.
I feel like the pressing scheme has always been a little bit, has gotten a little bit heightened when they play Nagby. I feel like Struber, in like his pregame conferences before playing Columbus when he was in charge would be, very focused on Nagby. And then, come game time, it was be very clear that the midfield structure was based around eliminating Nagby's threat. And it, usually worked pretty well. So I don't know how much of that how much of that kind of security blanket Lassane is going to retain. But that could be, one of the fault lines that the game falls on is whether Nagby getting maybe a little bit more space than he's been used to the last couple of years kind of helps Columbus spring things a little better. But if he doesn't, or if they decide to suffocate him again, maybe that draws back the attack a little bit and then leads to, like Pete just said, just kind of the first slog game in a few.
It's interesting because that my memory of Nagby with Atlanta was that he was kind of used by Martino as a pressure valve,
right?
Bit, where he held onto the ball and sucked in our players and then allowed for them to switch on us pretty quickly,
right?
Which of course only really worked in the one game, but the consequential game. But so it would be interesting to see if we do let up on him a little bit, and how we might split our attention between him and Zelarayan. It does get me thinking about our own personnel. Presumably, I don't know what the deal with Van Zier's fitness is, but Barlow and Manuel did lead the line, I guess, fairly effectively. Barlow is still driving me a little crazy. We're like, I swear this is a more recent thing with him. I don't remember him always doing this, but it's like whenever there's a long ball, he's developed this weird thing where he like is constant. He's like trying to watch it for its entire path the entire time. His head is on a swivel, like in a bad way. He doesn't
trust that it's going to get there.
Yeah, it's like he's like constantly looking. I'm like, dude, just put your head down and keep running.
Or he's not even like making that little like calculation in your head where it's like, oh, it's probably going to land around like this and just run towards that spot. He's just reacting to where the ball is going to be the whole time, which makes him late to the ball.
He's just trying to watch it the whole time. Yeah. That reminds me, it also helps that we're watching the Mets highlights on TV right now. One of my most surreal, like, times watching baseball highlights that Baseball Tonight was on, and Tim Kirkjian just like had this random cutaway like to him to talk for like 2 minutes while they figured out something else to do. And he was like, yeah, guys, one of the reasons that Ichiro is so good is that he's actually a mathematical genius. You know, when he's out in right field, when he sees the ball, he's doing all of these equations in his head to like figure out where the ball is going to go. And I feel like I remember this being the first time when I was like watching Baseball Tonight as a kid and being like, that's such bullshit. They're just making shit up. That was my first time where I was like, they just make shit up on here. Like,
they should bring Tim Kirkjian onto Apple to explain Tom Barlow's assessment of long balls.
Honestly, I would love that.
I like that. That's like a weirdly racist retelling of like Spider-Man lore, because that's how he navigates through the cities.
Yeah.
He calculates the arcs, you know, because he's Spider-Man. You know,
The fact that it was Kirkjian also meant that like. I think he, like, in his own way, 100% believed it. I think he convinced himself this was true. I can't remember if like, maybe Ichiro told him this as a joke and he just, like, bit on it entirely. Anyway, Lloyd, Sam, get it together. This is your new goal to talk about that. Barlow, hit the books. Start starting your trigonometry. You don't need to stare at the ball the whole time. Anyway, I'm looking forward to this game, I guess. I'll be interested to see if Drew plays in that same position in the midfield, and if everyone's fit, it'll be interesting to see between who between CCJ, Amaya, Edelman, and Stroud starts. It's a genuine logjam right there, and I'm hoping Reyes is fit. I think if Reyes is fit, my hopes of getting a point here are massively boosted. I think if it's Nealis and Ndam, I'm probably a little bit more pessimistic, to be honest. That's going to be my take on the situation. Any other words on sports here? Any other mathematical calculations on people you want to see, results you expect?
Has anyone ever wondered why, you know, XG doesn't add up to the amount of goals with the law of big numbers? I don't, you know.
No one's ever thought about that before.
Right.
Yeah.
So no one thinks about XG. They just use it to their own ends.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. Well, seems as good a time as any. Hopefully we are talking to you next week with more Red Bulls points in the bag.
Well, I think we're hopeful because it's a Mets win, baby.
That's right.
¡Echales!